Hey there, Cinemaster fans! Hope you're ready for some movie magic. Let's dive right in. The movie It Stains the Sands. Red begins after the zombie apocalypse happens. Molly and her boyfriend Nick drive through the Nevada desert, away from the burning Las Vegas. Nick knows a guy named Jimmy, who will meet them at an airfield and take them to Mexico, hoping to reach a safer zombie-free zone. On the way, Molly snorts some nose candy and drinks some vodka, being too tired of the current runaway life. Just then, she gets overwhelmed and Nick has to pull over so she can throw up. Molly returns to the car and Nick seriously tells her not to make him stop again since they're only 30 miles away. However, as Nick restarts the car, one of the wheels gets stuck in the sand. Nick only makes it worse by trying to drive forward. The two start blaming each other. Nick manages to get a phone signal and calls Jimmy for help. While talking to Jimmy, the phone gets jammed and loses signal. A moment later, Molly spots a lone man walking toward them, realizing it's a male zombie in a suit. Nick runs back to the car and draws his gun, aiming to kill the dead. The phone drops on the ground but goes unnoticed at the time. After 3 consecutive shots, Nick takes the zombie down. The two enjoy their victory for a moment before the zombie gets back to his feet and heads toward them again. Nick tries to shoot the zombie in the head, but he misses his chance again. With the gun empty, the two have to barricade themselves in the car, hoping the zombie will eventually lose interest. They patiently wait until dawn. The zombie keeps roaring outside at the window the whole time. While Molly blames Nick for dropping the phone, they realize the zombie has mysteriously disappeared. They turn the headlights on to look for the walking dead, but it's still too dark. Molly grabs the flashlight and reluctantly looks around, thinking the stubborn sicko might finally give up on them. The two decide to get out together to look for the phone. As Molly finally picks up the phone, Nick is suddenly attacked by the walking dead coming from behind him. His body is then torn apart and eaten. Panicked, Molly decides to pack everything left in the car and hike out on her own at night before the zombie targets her as his next prey. In the darkness of the desert, Molly runs as fast as she can with the flashlight. The next morning, Molly tries to call Jimmy to let him know she'll be at the airport a bit later than expected. Jimmy gets pissed and hangs up, making no promise to wait for her. After checking the distance on her phone's map, Molly decides to walk to the destination on foot, which is more than 30 miles to the north. While walking, she realizes it's her time of the month. Luckily, she finds the very last tampon in her bag. She keeps going with her original plan, carrying a few bottles of water, a bottle of vodka, a lighter, some flake powder, and a pack of cigarettes. A moment later, Molly sees 2 aircraft flying overhead, probably Jimmy and his team. Despairing, Molly does some candy before walking toward the map, becoming uncertain about where to go next. At night, she sits by a fire and starts thinking about her only son, Chase. When she's almost falling asleep, the zombie appears again and attacks her. Luckily, Molly manages to get away and climbs up onto a nearby rock. She has to stay there for the night. The next morning, the sicko wakes Molly up. It seems like he's never letting go of her. Molly tries to get the zombie to fetch a wooden stick, treating him like a dog. She quickly flees from the bloodthirsty zombie while he's busy with the bloody meal. In the burning desert, Molly decides to keep heading for the airfield, followed by the clumsy, slow zombie who keeps pursuing but, for some unknown reason, doesn't harm Molly. Gradually, Molly finds that the sicko's company isn't so bad. At least, on this endless journey, she has some motivation to keep moving, one step after another, as she mutters to herself. After walking half a day under the heat and drinking most of her water, Molly becomes exhausted and dehydrated. She comes across an abandoned house and decides to stay the night, temporarily ditching the zombie. Molly finds an empty bed and enjoys her very last cigarette, slowly falling asleep in peace. After a while, Molly is awakened by some noise. It's the same zombie who never gave up on her. Molly hides in the bathtub and eventually gets away from the sicko. However, her relief doesn't last long as the stalker zombie approaches her yet again. She angrily throws rocks at the zombie, telling him to leave her alone, but the zombie never listens. She has no choice but to let the zombie tail her on the way. She compares him to the guys she met in a bar. They're just as gross as the stalker zombie, and she's never been impressed with any of them. She decides to name the sicko Smalls, which stands for the size of men's body parts she's seen in her life. Molly thanks Smalls for never talking back. On the way, she shoots the breeze with Smalls about the magical white powder that keeps her full without food. At night, she sits with Smalls across from the fire. Molly recalls her past as a stripper, which upsets her for a while. She sips from the vodka bottle and gets angry at those who judged her back then. Still, Smalls turns out to be the only one she can blame, though he doesn't get what she's saying. Molly is grumbling about. The following morning, Molly receives the last warning from Jimmy, stating that he'll leave tomorrow morning regardless of whether she can make it or not. At this point, Molly has run out of water and her skin becomes tanned and dehydrated after days exposed to the sun. sun. Suddenly, strong winds lift large amounts of sand and dust from the bare, dry soil into the atmosphere. Molly soon realizes it's a dust storm and tries to run away from it. However, both Smalls and Molly are knocked out in the storm. Right after that, Molly slowly regains consciousness and spots a car approaching. Astonished, she calls out loudly for help. Fortunately, two men notice her and pull over to check on her. They immediately give her water and help the miserable woman get up and into their car. We are now introduced to Ted and Jason, who seem to be two gallant gentlemen. As Molly realizes she has lost her bag in the storm, Jason and Ted offer to help her find it so Molly can enjoy the AC in the car. Feeling blessed and thankful, Molly rolls up the car window, charges her phone, and waits for the men. She spots a photo of a father and a son and realizes the son's hat looks like Jason's. She also finds a bag with bloodstains on it. Soon she realizes that Ted and Jason are murderers, and the car must belong to their victims. The two men now get back into the car and ask Molly for more information about the airfield. Molly reluctantly describes it and asks to leave politely to keep herself safe. Jason suddenly attacks her from behind with a plastic bag. Ted also helps his friend, threatening Molly to reveal more about the airfield. As Molly gives them all the information she has, the men still don't leave her alone. It is at this point that Smalls rises up from the sand and heads to the car. As he hears Molly cry out for help, Smalls bites Ted in the neck and eats his body while Jason flees in his car. Molly falls into hallucinations and despair at the same time. She knows Smalls just happened to rescue her, but she feels disgusted and indifferent for no reason. A moment later, she collects some of the drop stuff from Jason's car. She has an inflatable boat and some bottles of water. Molly pulls the boat along and moves forward. After several steps, she stumbles through the harsh desert in despair after all the nightmares she's been through. But when Smalls approaches, she decides to stop being miserable and believes that with Smalls' help, she'll make it to the airfield. It's good that Smalls can't talk, so Molly can get over bad things easier. As the two pass a junkyard, Molly makes Smalls carry her boat and water by tying a tire around his neck. Smalls will never stay away from Molly anyway. Molly then shares about her sister who can't have a baby. She took Molly's son, Little Chase, to be her own, as Molly was too young and reckless at the time to be a mother. Molly admits that she couldn't even take care of herself, so it was a good choice to let her sister be her son's mom. At this point, Molly reluctantly accepts the walker as a companion instead of as a creature. Molly decides to train Smalls as her pet, making him obey her orders or else she'll leave him. Smalls is smart enough to learn that he'd better not mess with Molly. The two of them finally reach the highway, which is several miles more to Jimmy. On the way, Molly spots some military tanks rushing toward them. She quickly hides Smalls, knowing that the troops will open fire at any walking corpse they see. Molly is then confronted by the soldiers, who suspect she's infected. Molly explains that she's clean and she's on her way to see her husband at the nearby airbase. Just then, Smalls appears, and the soldiers believe he's Molly's infected husband. Molly begs them not to kill Smalls, and they eventually listen. However, one of the soldiers shoots Smalls in the leg, triggering him. Molly tries to calm Smalls down, only to get bitten on her finger. Molly has no choice but to chop off her bleeding finger with a stone to avoid infection. Although bleeding badly, Molly has to carry wounded Smalls along. She finally sees the airfield ahead, but Smalls is now too weak to move on. Molly thanks Smalls for being with her on the way before she ends his life with a big rock. Walking dead Smalls is now gone. Eventually, Molly meets up with Jimmy and his team before flying to Mexico. She calls her sister to say her last goodbye to Chase. Chase appears scared and frightened over the phone, telling Molly that everyone left him. Molly realizes her sister must have been infected or killed, and Chase is now all alone in his bedroom for days. Molly gives up the plan to go to Mexico and decides to rescue her son as soon as possible in Las Vegas. She gets in a fight with several zombies and humans at the airfield and successfully takes the car keys from one of them. Molly goes straight back on the way to save her little Chase. She arrives in the town, which is now completely deserted. Armed with a shovel, Molly gets into her sister's house and is ready to fight for Chase. Her sister and brother-in-law were indeed killed, as she discovers when she enters the house. Molly finally finds Chase hiding in an indoor tent. The two embrace in happiness as Molly makes her very first attempt to gain her son's trust. Molly quickly takes Chase out of the house, but soon they are confronted by a pack of zombies at the front door. Molly bravely tells Chase to stay behind her no matter what happens. She then storms in on the zombies right after that, using her shovel. Like and subscribe to watch more videos like this, and don't forget to turn on your notifications. Thanks for watching.